FaceTime about what they're doing, you know, and what their life is like. And for you to kind of come to this place where you're like, I'm gonna open up and talk about this part of my story. I would really love if you could share your thoughts and kind of that experience.
I feel like I got to a place where I knew inside that some of the stuff I was experiencing was not what anyone else should experience in my position. So, and I would get DMs from women asking a lot about advice. Hey, I'm trying to get into your industry. Can you give me advice about some of the challenges, what are the pros, what are the cons that I'm going to face while trying to navigate this new industry? And that kind of stuck with me, was thinking to myself, okay, this is not a normal experience, and I don't want women that are new to this industry coming in to think it's okay for a male higher up to ask questions of that nature. For me in particular, I was asked if I planned on getting knocked up anytime soon during a job interview. And to me, that was disheartening, because it made me feel like as women, we can't have it all. So you're telling me that I have to pick my career or having a family.
Right.
And I didn't want women that were new to the industry to think that that was normal and they should just brush it off like the rest of us had for so long. I actually loved this recent stand-up of Amy Schumer's, because she was talking about the Me Too movement and how so many of us women for so many years have just kind of brushed it off and thought, oh, this is okay. And we have this younger generation of women coming up underneath us that are saying, wait, you mean you guys have tolerated this for so many years? Why don't you do something about it?
Right. So
that was kind of, I had two things that really pushed me. One, hearing so many stories from other women that were scared to come forward for fear that they would lose their jobs. And also I watched Wonder Woman for the first time, and it inspired me to want to help out other women even more. So
that's incredible. I mean, I thank you for sharing that story, because I think it's so important for other people to hear it and to be inspired by that and motivated and empowered by that. And you've just sort of taken that platform and your success, and you've been like a cheerleader. So even though you didn't make it in high school, like you're the biggest cheerleader now for everyone, you know, men and women, but in particularly women and female entrepreneurs. So now you're in tech. So you started in sports, well, actually in dance, right? That was
dance was my
literally
passion
a career of its own and passion. And so now you're in tech. So tell us a little bit about that. I mean, that leads, I know, right into elevator pitch, but you have a tech company, a tech project as well, right?
So we're getting ready to launch this new app called Big Shot Basketball, or it's just Big Shot for short. And it's essentially the Pokemon version, or Pokemon Go sports version.
Oh,
so rather than collecting your favorite Pokemon, you'll build fantasy teams and go head to head with your friends.
How fun. That's awesome. And that's coming out soon?
Yeah, in June.
That's so cool.
I'm really excited.
What made you, I mean, did you play video games when you were younger?
I did. That was kind of the way I connected with my younger brother, was through sports and video games.
How fun.
And it's crazy to see how the sports world is changing to now being focused around esports. And those traditional sports are kind of not falling aside just yet, but esports are taking such a dominant place in this industry.
It really is. I actually have a friend whose son is at school on an esports scholarship.
Really?
Yeah, like I didn't even know it was a thing until she told me. And they have teams, and he's the captain, and he needs to do well academically, otherwise he's going to be booted off the team. So just like traditional sports, they have the same rules for these esport teams, and they have scholarships and everything. So
I think what's so intriguing about esports is that we've seen people find success in this industry after only playing for a few years. So it makes anyone think, okay, I can do this too. I can be successful at this.
No, you're right. It's true. It's not something that they had to start doing when they were 2, you know, or 3. So it's actually very cool, and it's a whole new thing for someone, I think, like in our generation who didn't see that as much growing up. So talk to me a little bit about elevator pitch, because this is so exciting that this show is so successful and it just keeps going season after season. And I know there's some people that haven't had a chance yet to binge watch. So tell us a little bit about that and that part of your journey.
So we just wrapped the 4th season, and it'll air, I believe, either at the end of this month or the following month. And I think the reason why this show is so successful is because you get to see the glory moments of these companies and these entrepreneurs' hard work. So it's you don't see all of the challenges that they faced.
Right.
You see them as they're on the upswing in their career, and hopefully they get a deal if we send them up to the boardroom. And it's been a very emotional journey for me, because I know how hard I've worked at my career, and to see some of these entrepreneurs and make it big and come up to the boardroom with these brilliant ideas that are going to change the world is something that I'm more than grateful to be a part of.
Yeah. Well, what are, like, there's so many entrepreneurs. I feel like every day someone's like, I'm quitting my job, I'm going to be an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
I'm going to start my own business. What are some key pieces of advice you can give someone, because you've seen it, I mean, across the whole spectrum, you know, as a starting one yourself, and then now you're an investor and a judge, you know, giving advice, you know, to other entrepreneurs. What's some good pieces of nuggets?
I would say make sure you're passionate about your concept or your company, because you're going to put in hours and hours of miserable time and work if you're not passionate about it. And the beauty of seeing some of these entrepreneurs come up to the boardroom with their concepts is you can tell that they love what they're doing and they're passionate and they believe that their concept is going to change the world. So that's my first piece of advice, is make sure that you're very passionate about whatever you're working on. My second piece of advice would be to construct an elevator pitch, whether you're on the show or just in real life, because those 60 or 90 seconds that you have to sell your idea to investors is crucial. And if you don't have the perfect elevator pitch, you're not going to get the funding, or the investors that you're trying to get funding from are not going to understand what you're trying to do. Because obviously, as the entrepreneur, you know what your concept is. But can you convey that to your investors in a short amount of time?
So how do you create an elevator pitch? I mean, I think this is probably the most important question that I ask you today, and this is what everyone's going to be clued in on. So how do you do it?
I think the most important thing, so some of the things that we look for when we're watching the pitches to decide if we want to send them up to the boardroom or send them down if their pitch wasn't the best that it could have been. Some of the things we look for is passion. We look for, what is the concept? Can we help? If we can't help or we don't make a good fit for them, then it's pointless to waste their time and bring them up. Also, there were some companies where they pitched their concept, and when the pitch ended, we still didn't know what they were selling us.
So it was unclear.
It was unclear. So make sure it's clear, concise, and that you're really getting across exactly the highlights of what you're selling us and what your concept is. Passion, drive. I always personally like to hear the background of the entrepreneur.
And
their
story.
Their story. How did you come up with this concept? So if you have time to throw that in there too, kind of what gives you credibility as an entrepreneur to come up with this concept, and why should you be our point person if I'm going to invest in this on this topic? Or
so can the background, can that be part of the elevator pitch?
Because
absolutely. Is it really supposed to just be 60 seconds, or?
On the show, yes, because we want it to be a little challenging for them. But in real life, I mean, essentially you have, I would say, 60 to 90 seconds to really grab someone's attention. The pitches on the show that I think did the best were the ones that gave us all the information, but still left us wanting more. Left us with a bunch of questions in terms of wanting to know more about the concept.
But what kind of questions were they? Because they weren't questions that were like, wait, what's that about?
Yeah.
So what questions did it leave you wanting to know more? I mean, what questions did you have in your head?
Sometimes they would tell us what their sales were. Sometimes they would leave us on the edge of our seat,
okay.
wanting to know the exact numbers.
Yeah. That's a good one.
I mean, you can only fit so much information into 60 seconds, too.
Yeah, that's true.
So if they've laid out all the key components and we're still on the edge of our seats wanting to know more, then that's the perfect elevator pitch.
That's so great. Thank you for sharing that, because I know that when people listen to this, they're going to be taking notes, because this is exactly what every entrepreneur needs to do. And I'll be honest, even when I first started, I couldn't explain, what culinary alchemy was in 30 seconds or 60 seconds. I mean, if you let me have 5 minutes, then you get it. But you don't always have 5 minutes.
Right.
So that is so important to have that very clear, concise description. And it's crazy how actually hard it is to kind of sum up your life and what you're doing and all the things into 60 seconds. So thank you for kind of like giving those bullet points, because I think that really helps. So that's a big thing that you're doing right now. Any other special projects that you can share with us?
So we're about to launch Big Shot.
Yes.
That's taken a lot of my focus, and then Elevator Pitch will air in the next month or two. But for me, the next phase of my career, I feel like I'm always trying to find the path that has not been trailblazed yet.
Yeah.
And for me, I noticed that there weren't as many women in esports, probably because it's newer. I feel like just as many women play video games as men, though.
Really?
I do. I just feel like maybe they're not as open about it, or they don't talk about it, or not as vocal. And so for me, I realized, okay, there's not really a female reporter that's covering this just yet. And I know it's getting bigger and bigger. The NCAA at some point will launch a league for the colleges to compete against each other. And I wanted to be one of those trailblazing women that was in at the start.
Yeah.
So I filmed an esports pilot, and
Amazing.
We're waiting to hear back about when we'll film more for that.
Amazing. That's awesome. I love that. And I love that you're kind of always sort of initiating, I love that idea that you're like, what hasn't been done yet? And I'm going to go try to do it. And I think that's incredibly inspiring. And, do you think there's something is there any sort of like practice that you started when you were younger, maybe something that your family taught you, or just something that you started on your own that kind of got you into that space?
Ooh, I mean, my mom is to thank for my mentality in general when it comes to work, because she's always placed the focus on work for me. She would say, Lindsay, find yourself, find your career, find what you want to do and what you're passionate about, and then the right man will come along. So that's kind of always stuck in my head. The other practice or tactic I would say that my parents implemented when I was younger was when they would tell me no, unless it was for a safety reason, like don't touch the hot stove, they would almost reward me when I would find ways around their no. Like unique, creative ways. And so my mom, even to this day, if I have a problem, I'll still call her up and ask for her advice. She'll say, Lindsay, I paid for you to be in these creative Odyssey of the Mind courses growing up. She's like, use your creativity, find a way around no. And that's kind of stuck with me.
That's so great. I love that. And that's something that people can do now, even if they didn't get to start doing that when they were young. Just finding creative ways and putting yourself into different programs, right? Seminars or talks. Something that I don't usually ask, but you're such a wealth of information right now. I would love to know if there's any podcasts or any books that you have leaned on in your career that we could share.
Ooh, my gosh, I love reading. I love podcasts. I really love the Tim Ferriss podcast.
Okay.
Because I find that he asks the most interesting questions about his guests, and they're prominent guests that have been asked 1,000 questions in their careers. And he always finds the way to ask a question that you would never think, like Ariana Huffington. How do you brush your teeth in the morning that's unique? And it's stuff that we can all apply to our lives. I'm like, I never thought I would be listening to a podcast about Ariana Huffington brushing her teeth and her practice of listing 3 things she's grateful for every morning. And I'm like, oh, but I can implement that into my own life.
Yep. Yep.
And so I really love that podcast. I really love that classical podcast, but that's not really an entrepreneurial podcast.
That doesn't have to be. It's just anything that has sort of like inspired you. And, you know, I love that you're able to share that. And I didn't know that she did the gratitude thing while she brushed her teeth. That's awesome. Because I do that every day, but before I brush my teeth. So.
Well, now you can combine the two and save time.